The Galactic Council, made up of representatives from the most powerful and ancient civilizations in the galaxy, had grown accustomed to their dominance. For centuries, they expanded their control with ease, subjugating lesser planets without resistance. Humanity, in their eyes, was just another primitive species, another world to bend to their will. As the Council convened to discuss the final stages of their conquest of Earth, there was no sense of urgency. Victory seemed inevitable. The Supreme Commander sat at the center of the Council's chamber, surrounded by high-ranking generals from various species. Their discussion revolved around the logistics of integrating Earth into the Council's growing empire. They expected minimal resistance, as had been the case with countless other worlds. The Earthlings were not advanced enough to pose any real threat. Their weapons, their technology, all outdated compared to the Council's superior might. There was no need for caution. This would be a swift operation, or so they believed. However, reports from the front lines began to shift the tone of the meeting. What started as minor concerns quickly became a source of confusion. The initial invasion had not gone as smoothly as planned. Alien fleets had landed, ready to wipe out any form of resistance, but they were met with tactics unlike anything they had faced before. Guerrilla warfare, cyber attacks, and psychological operations. Humanity was fighting back in ways the Council hadn't anticipated. The Council generals were baffled. They had seen the humans as primitive, lacking the advanced technology and coordination that would allow them to be a threat. Yet, the humans were proving to be resilient. Reports of entire squads being ambushed in the dead of night, of alien communications being hijacked, and of small groups of human fighters evading capture for weeks were beginning to surface with increasing frequency. "They adapt too quickly," one general remarked, frustrated by the escalating chaos on the ground. The Supreme Commander, however, was unmoved. "This is nothing more than the dying gasps of a doomed species. We will crush them underfoot as we have done with countless others." But the evidence suggested otherwise. For every step forward the Council's forces made, the humans found a way to retaliate. They utilized guerrilla warfare, blending into their surroundings, and leveraging their knowledge of the terrain to launch surprise attacks. Entire battalions of alien soldiers were being neutralized before they could even understand what had happened. Cyber attacks disrupted the Council's command systems, leaving their forces disoriented and vulnerable. And perhaps most troubling of all, humanity's ability to manipulate the narrative was sowing doubt even among the Council's own soldiers. The Council still believed the war was theirs to win, but these setbacks were becoming a nuisance. Humanity wasn't simply defending itself, it was fighting back in ways the Council had never experienced. A species they had deemed inferior was beginning to show signs of tactical brilliance, something the Council had long believed to be exclusive to its most elite forces. The Supreme Commander grew impatient. In an effort to end this resistance once and for all, he ordered a massive bombardment of Earth's major cities. Alien warships darkened the skies over humanity's most densely populated areas, launching an unrelenting assault. Buildings crumbled under the weight of the Council's firepower, entire streets turned to rubble, and the Earth seemed to shake under the force of the attack. From space, it looked like a victory was imminent. To the aliens, Earth seemed on the brink of collapse. But Earth did not collapse. Even in the face of overwhelming destruction, humanity fought back. In the midst of the bombardment, small human counterattacks began to strike at the heart of the alien fleet. Ground-based missile systems that had gone undetected launched coordinated strikes against the warships, taking several out of commission. Human pilots, flying older, seemingly obsolete aircraft, found ways to exploit weaknesses in the alien defenses. The Galactic Council's forces were being hit in ways they couldn't anticipate, and for the first time, they were sustaining significant losses. In one instance, a Council warship, seemingly invincible, was disabled by a well-placed cyber attack from a group of human hackers. The aliens aboard the ship, caught in complete disarray, were left vulnerable as human forces moved in. The Council had underestimated just how resourceful humanity could be, and it was costing them. The Supreme Commander, watching from his command center, was furious. How could a species so seemingly primitive be causing this much damage? His generals were at a loss for answers. The arrogance that had fueled the Council's invasion was beginning to crack under the weight of their miscalculations. Yet the commander's pride would not allow him to consider a retreat. Instead, he doubled down, ordering a total assault on Earth. No more playing around. Every available resource was to be used to crush the human resistance once and for all. The Council's forces were to show no mercy, no hesitation, and no restraint. Victory, he insisted, was within reach. But as the Supreme Commander barked out his orders, a message was intercepted by human forces. It was a call for a ceasefire from one of the alien generals, a sign that not everyone in the Council believed this war could be won easily. That message never reached the commander. Unbeknownst to the Supreme Commander, his assumption of humanity's weakness would be his undoing. While the Council believed the humans were nearing their breaking point, those on the ground knew the truth. Humanity had just begun to fight. And as that intercepted message echoed through the human command centers, a realization spread among the defenders of Earth. The Council had no idea what it was up against. Humanity, long underestimated and pushed to the brink, was just getting started. The Council's declaration of war was only the beginning of what would become their greatest and most unexpected defeat. Despite the Council's full-scale assault, humanity showed no sign of surrender. The initial bombardment may have caused widespread destruction, but it didn't break Earth's will. Instead, it ignited something far more dangerous: retaliation. Humanity had always been underestimated, even before the war began. Their technology, though not as advanced as the Council's, was flexible. Their military strategies, while unconventional, were highly adaptive. This adaptability became a key factor in their fight against the alien forces. Humans had an uncanny ability to learn from their losses, to evolve in the heat of battle. Every failed encounter was a lesson, and every victory, no matter how small, reinforced their resolve. The first major counteroffensive was swift and decisive. Small, agile human strike teams, often working behind enemy lines, targeted key infrastructure supporting the Council's forces. They attacked supply chains, sabotaged key facilities, and even managed to disable several key communication nodes, leaving the alien forces temporarily blind. These were not large-scale assaults but precision strikes, designed to cripple the alien war machine from within. On the ground, the aliens found themselves constantly under attack. Their bases were no longer secure, as human forces launched guerrilla-style raids under the cover of night, inflicting heavy casualties. Every time the Council regrouped, humans were one step ahead, using tactics the aliens hadn't prepared for. These weren't just random acts of rebellion. They were coordinated strikes, planned by some of the brightest human minds who had risen to prominence during the war. At the forefront of this effort was a military strategist known by the codename Ghost. His real name remained a mystery, but his tactics were legendary. Ghost wasn't a traditional soldier. He came from a background in cyber warfare, but when the war broke out, he quickly adapted to the chaos of physical combat. His strategies were built on one simple principle: never fight the enemy on their terms. Instead, he turned the Council's own arrogance against them, using psychological warfare to create fear and uncertainty among their ranks. Under Ghost's command, human forces became more than just soldiers, they became shadows. They struck when least expected, exploiting the weaknesses in the alien forces' rigid military structure. Their attacks were relentless, precise, and devastating. What the Council once viewed as a scattered resistance had transformed into a coordinated military campaign. One of the Council's greatest weaknesses was its reliance on advanced technology. Their armies were equipped with state-of-the-art equipment, but they lacked the instinct and ingenuity that humans possessed. This technological dependency became their Achilles heel. Human hackers, including Ghost himself, were able to exploit this, launching devastating cyber attacks that crippled the Council's fleets. In one operation, a team of human hackers infiltrated the command systems of an alien warship, shutting down its defensive shields and leaving it exposed to an Earth-based missile strike. The aliens had no contingency plans for such tactics. Their overconfidence in their superiority had left them vulnerable to the kind of warfare they had never prepared for. Earth's forces took full advantage of this. Even though they lacked the Council's raw firepower, they made up for it in cunning and unpredictability. This wasn't just a war of attrition, it was a battle of wits, and humanity was winning. What truly began to unsettle the Council, however, wasn't the physical damage humans were inflicting. It was the psychological toll. Alien soldiers, once so sure of their victory, began to fear the humans. The propaganda that had been drilled into them, that humanity was weak, primitive, and destined for defeat, began to crumble in the face of reality. Council soldiers spoke in hushed tones about the invisible human threat, about Ghost and his team's ability to strike without warning, leaving no survivors to tell the tale. Humanity's psychological warfare extended beyond the battlefield. They targeted the Council's command structure itself, broadcasting hacked messages that sowed discord among the alien leaders. These messages, often carefully crafted by human intelligence officers, played on the Council's own arrogance and fear, driving a wedge between the alien generals. Some began to doubt the wisdom of continuing the war. If humanity could inflict this much damage with inferior technology, what would happen if they grew even stronger? Back on Earth, scientists were already working on that very possibility. Humanity's rapid technological advancement was another element the Council hadn't accounted for. While the aliens had grown complacent with their superior tech, humans were innovating, combining salvaged alien technology with their own inventions. What started as crude attempts to reverse engineer alien equipment soon turned into breakthroughs that shifted the balance of power. Hybrid weapons and defenses, blending human creativity with alien design, began appearing on the battlefield. Human engineers figured out how to modify alien energy shields to enhance Earth's defenses. Soldiers were now equipped with hybrid weapons that could penetrate the Council's strongest armor. Even Earth spacecraft, once outmatched by the alien fleet, had been upgraded, turning what were once outdated relics into lethal machines of war. By this point, the Council's confidence was beginning to wane. Their losses were mounting, and the once dismissive attitude toward humanity was shifting to one of deep concern. Despite all their efforts, the Council had underestimated the sheer resilience and determination of the human spirit. Some alien factions within the Council began to question whether the war was winnable at all. These voices, though still in the minority, began to gain traction. A call for a ceasefire was raised quietly, but it was drowned out by the more hawkish members of the Council, who believed humanity could still be crushed with a final, overwhelming assault. But as humanity's counterattacks grew in scale and sophistication, the Council found themselves in a precarious position. Every step they took forward was met with fierce resistance. Their fleets, once thought invincible, were now vulnerable to human ingenuity. Their soldiers, once confident in their victory, were now plagued with doubt and fear. The Council's generals, though still boasting about their superiority in private, were increasingly aware that they were losing control. The Supreme Commander, though refusing to admit it, was running out of options. The war they had expected to win in a matter of days had dragged on far longer than anticipated, and there was no end in sight. It was at this point that Ghost and his human forces intercepted the Council's first real sign of desperation, a secret message from one of the alien factions, offering terms for peace. But humanity was no longer interested in peace. The humans had endured too much, lost too many, and come too far. As Ghost's team prepared for their next strike, one message echoed through every communication channel humanity could tap into. It was a simple but defiant statement, sent to the Council's highest-ranking officials. "We're just getting started." The Galactic Council, once a symbol of unshakable authority, was beginning to fracture from within. The war with humanity had dragged on longer than anyone anticipated, and the losses they were suffering were far worse than any previous conflict. The Supreme Commander refused to acknowledge it publicly, but the cracks were showing. Every report from the front lines indicated that the situation was spiraling out of control, and whispers of doubt were spreading throughout the Council. Alien factions that had once been united in their conquest of Earth were now divided. The more aggressive species, who had long viewed humanity as nothing more than an obstacle to be crushed, still demanded full-scale annihilation. They believed that a final, overwhelming strike could end the war in their favor. But others were more cautious. These voices, quieter but growing stronger, argued that humanity was unlike any enemy they had faced before. To continue underestimating them would be the Council's greatest mistake. The internal conflict was escalating. Some of the Council's most senior members began to question the Supreme Commander's leadership. His stubborn refusal to change tactics had already cost them dearly. Alien generals who had once been his staunchest supporters were now beginning to wonder if perhaps a diplomatic solution was necessary. They had never imagined that humanity could hold out for this long, let alone inflict such devastating damage on the Council's forces. The Supreme Commander, however, refused to listen. His pride blinded him to the reality of the situation. To him, the war was still a matter of principle. The Council could not afford to show weakness. Retreat or negotiation would signal to the rest of the galaxy that their power was fading, and that was something he could never allow. He doubled down on his decision to crush humanity, ordering the largest mobilization of forces the Council had ever seen. Meanwhile, the dissent among the Council's ranks was spreading. Some alien species were beginning to lose faith in the war entirely. Their soldiers were demoralized, their resources were being drained at an unsustainable rate, and they were starting to realize that humanity's resilience was no fluke. What had once seemed like a brief conquest was now turning into a drawn-out conflict with no clear end in sight. The Council's soldiers on the ground were also feeling the strain. Morale had plummeted as news of human victories spread. Entire battalions of alien troops had been wiped out by human guerrilla fighters. Their technological superiority no longer felt like a guarantee of success, and the psychological toll was becoming impossible to ignore. Stories of human attacks, often striking from the shadows with terrifying precision, had created an air of fear among the alien forces. They began to see humans not as a primitive species but as a genuine threat. Desertions among the alien ranks increased. Soldiers, terrified of facing the relentless human resistance, abandoned their posts and fled. Others, sensing the futility of the fight, quietly began communicating with human forces, offering information in exchange for their lives. The Council's once united military was falling apart, and with each passing day, their control over the situation weakened. Despite the mounting evidence of their impending defeat, the Supreme Commander pressed on. He ignored the warnings from his generals, dismissing their concerns as cowardice. His arrogance had consumed him, and he remained convinced that humanity's victories were merely temporary setbacks. In his eyes, the Council was still invincible, and the humans were simply delaying the inevitable. But the reality on the ground was far different. Human forces, now emboldened by their successes, had shifted from defense to offense. Ghost and his team had taken the fight to the Council, targeting key alien installations and striking fear into the heart of the alien empire. Each attack was more daring than the last, and the Council's forces were unable to keep up. Ghost had become a legend among human soldiers and a nightmare for the aliens. His name was spoken in hushed tones among the Council's troops, a symbol of the unstoppable human will to survive. The Council's communication networks were no longer secure. Human hackers had infiltrated their systems, spreading false information and creating confusion among the alien command structure. In one particularly devastating operation, human forces managed to send a false order to a Council fleet, directing them into an ambush that resulted in the complete destruction of the alien ships. The Council had been outmaneuvered, and their losses were piling up. The growing desperation within the Council finally reached a breaking point. One of the more cautious alien factions, recognizing that their chances of victory were slipping away, secretly reached out to humanity with an offer of peace. They were willing to negotiate, to end the bloodshed before the situation grew even worse. But humanity, now in a position of strength, was no longer interested in a ceasefire. Too much had been lost, too many lives had been sacrificed. Ghost and the other human leaders knew that this was their moment, the moment to prove that humanity would not be bullied or subjugated by any force in the galaxy. The Supreme Commander, upon learning of the peace offer, was furious. He saw it as an act of betrayal, a sign of weakness that would only embolden humanity further. In a final, desperate attempt to salvage his reputation and the Council's dominance, he ordered an all-out assault on Earth. Every remaining resource, every ship, every soldier was to be thrown at the humans in a last-ditch effort to break their will. But humanity was ready. The Council's desperation was evident, and human forces had anticipated such a move. With their hybrid technology, advanced defenses, and newfound confidence, they were prepared to face whatever the Council threw at them. What the Supreme Commander failed to realize was that the more he pushed, the stronger humanity became. As the Council's forces began their final assault, they were met with a human resistance fiercer than anything they had encountered before. Human soldiers, once fighting for survival, were now fighting for victory. The psychological tide had shifted, and the aliens found themselves on the defensive, their ranks crumbling under the weight of human determination. The Council, once so sure of their superiority, was now on the brink of collapse. The internal strife that had been simmering for so long was finally boiling over, and the Supreme Commander, blinded by his arrogance, was powerless to stop it. What had once seemed like an inevitable conquest had become the Council's greatest defeat. In their desperation to crush humanity, the Council had underestimated the one thing that made humans truly dangerous: their ability to fight back against impossible odds. And as the Supreme Commander's forces fell one by one, the message was clear. Humanity wasn't just surviving, they were winning. The final assault was underway, and the Galactic Council had committed everything they had left. This was their last chance to turn the tide, their last-ditch effort to break the will of humanity. Their fleets filled the skies, their ground troops prepared for a brutal, all-out invasion. The Supreme Commander watched from his command center, certain that this overwhelming force would finally bring the humans to their knees. He had no idea how wrong he was. Humanity was ready, more prepared than the Council could have anticipated. The advancements made by Earth scientists and engineers had transformed the battlefield. What were once inferior weapons and outdated defenses were now state-of-the-art, hybrid technologies, blending the best of human ingenuity and reverse-engineered alien tech. Earth's military, once scattered and overwhelmed, had now become a formidable force. No longer content to merely survive, humanity was now pushing for complete victory. As the alien fleets descended, they were met with a level of resistance far greater than anything they had experienced. The humans had turned the planet into a fortress. Their energy shields, enhanced by captured alien technology, deflected much of the initial bombardment. Hybrid weapons, capable of penetrating even the Council's strongest armor, unleashed devastating firepower on the incoming forces. Alien ships that had once seemed untouchable were now being picked off one by one. On the ground, the Council soldiers were facing an equally nightmarish scenario. Human forces, led by commanders who had learned to adapt quickly, launched counterattacks with surgical precision. Ghost, the legendary strategist who had become the face of the human resistance, coordinated the battle from behind the scenes, directing his forces with unmatched skill. His tactics were relentless, exploiting every weakness in the alien ranks. What had started as a final assault for the Council quickly turned into a massacre. Alien soldiers, disoriented and overwhelmed, fell in droves. The human forces were not only holding the line but pushing the invaders back. They moved with purpose, their determination unshakable. Every alien ship that was shot down, every ground unit that was decimated, was a testament to humanity's refusal to be conquered. The Council's forces, once confident and proud, were now in disarray. The psychological toll of the war had finally broken them. They had come to Earth expecting an easy victory, but they were met with fierce resistance at every turn. Desperation began to set in among the alien ranks. Commanders who had once boasted of humanity's inferiority now found themselves scrambling for survival. Desertions became rampant, as alien soldiers abandoned their posts, unwilling to face the humans any longer. But it wasn't just the soldiers who were faltering. The very foundation of the Galactic Council was crumbling. The Supreme Commander, realizing the gravity of the situation too late, ordered desperate measures. He called for reinforcements from distant sectors, but the response was slow, if not non-existent. Word had spread throughout the galaxy of the Council's failures. Species that had once feared their power were now beginning to question their authority. The Council's grip on the galaxy was slipping. Meanwhile, humanity's forces continued their relentless advance. What the Council had never understood was that humanity thrived in adversity. The more pressure they applied, the harder humans fought back. The will to survive had been replaced by the will to win. Every victory, no matter how small, had strengthened their resolve. And now, with the Council on the ropes, humanity was pushing for total domination. In one of the war's most decisive moments, Ghost led a covert operation deep into the heart of the Council's central command station. The mission was perilous, but Ghost had become a master of navigating impossible situations. His team infiltrated the alien stronghold with precision, bypassing security systems and disabling critical infrastructure. By the time the Council's forces realized what was happening, it was too late. The Supreme Commander, once so sure of his inevitable victory, found himself cornered. His fleet was in ruins, his soldiers scattered, and now his command station was under attack. In a final confrontation with Ghost, the Supreme Commander attempted to negotiate. He offered terms of surrender, pleading for his life and the lives of his remaining forces. But Ghost wasn't interested in negotiation. Humanity had suffered too much, lost too many lives, to let the Council off so easily. The war had been long, brutal, and costly, but the time for mercy had passed. With the fall of the Supreme Commander, the Galactic Council's defeat was complete. Their once mighty empire lay in ruins, shattered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Alien civilizations that had once bent to the Councils will now look to humanity with a mix of fear and respect. The power dynamic in the galaxy had shifted irrevocably. But humanity, despite their hard-won victory, did not seek to rule the galaxy with an iron fist. They had fought for their survival, for their freedom, and for their right to exist without the threat of oppression. And now, with the Council defeated, they extended an olive branch to those alien species who had suffered under the Council's rule. Those who surrendered were spared, allowed to rebuild their worlds without fear of retribution. The message from Earth was clear: humanity would not be provoked, not be conquered, but they also would not be tyrants. They sought peace, but they would never again allow themselves to be underestimated. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson, one that would resonate for generations to come. Humanity, despite being seen as a lesser species, had become the dominant force in the galaxy, not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through sheer willpower and determination. As the dust settled on the final battlefield, a message was broadcast from Earth to every corner of the galaxy. It was simple, direct, and echoed through the ruins of the Council's once great empire. This is humanity's galaxy now. With that, the war was over. The Council's remnants scattered, their influence broken. Humanity, standing victorious, had earned their place among the stars. They had been underestimated, oppressed, and pushed to the brink, but in the end, they had not only survived, they had triumphed. And the galaxy would never forget it.